Hi, everyone. Welcome again to a new episode of Pleasure Talks. Today, we have a special guest. We have Nathalie Jackson here with us. Hi, Nathalie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Laura. I'm really feeling honored to be here with you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. So, I this invitation is started because I put a little post on Facebook asking people um, if they will like to have a little chat with me about pleasure, and then you were one of the person who say yes, I want to do it. So, what piqued your curiosity about this topic?
Well, I think we're at a time and an era right now where it's necessary to remember ourselves as pleasurable beings. There's just too much to get distracted by and too much to spiral us down into dark and stressful places. And so pleasure, I believe, is a key. It's a pathway. And so I was really excited when I saw what you were doing. I'm like, yeah, this is necessary right now. Like we need this. So wanted to jump into the conversation.
Oh, that's lovely. Because yes, even in the preparation talk that we have, we discussed this idea of how we don't really know how to experience pleasure outside of the sexual realm.
Hmm.
But when in reality, there is so much pleasure, so much pleasurable experiences out there. But that's something like
Yeah.
it's not like a topic that we can learn, but even in a school. I think sometimes we get to this point where it's sort of like a taboo. Everywhere
Mhm.
is not a topic that we can discuss at the dining table.
That's right. Absolutely. And I think we need to undo that. The more we can normalize these conversations and just make it okay to talk about sex, to talk about pleasure, to and have it as part of our ongoing culture to talk about this in a normal way, in a healthy way, then I think we'll undo a lot of the unhealthy ways that it's been done in the culture. So I think it's a great idea, Laura.
So you have a school.
Mhm.
Tell us, how do you weave in what you do in your school and the topic of pleasure? Tell us
Yeah.
everything about it. Tell us all of the juicy details about your school and how your program.
Yes. Well, my women's program is called Woman Unveiled. It's a school of women's mysteries. And it's a 10-month long program that's designed to take one group of women through a variety of different processes and experiences and rituals in order to stir up, I would say, what's in the subconscious mind. The nature of the work that I do is about going into those hidden places, those places we don't normally go to, the things we don't normally talk about with people, and uncover what's there, what's blocking us from pleasure, from having a really beautiful meaningful relationship or multiple relationships, what's blocking us from living our life's purpose and doing what feels most alive in us. And so the nature of my work is to, we have a lot of really intense experiences that include fire walking and shadow work and all kinds of we sleep in the forest one night. We do kind of like some visioning together, some dreaming together. We have a dream temple, and all of it together uncovers what's hidden beneath the surface. And so that's the work that I do with women, and I also work with all genders in the realm of sexuality and shadow work.
Wow, that sounds like I want to move in to that. Because what it feels like, what it sounds like is a space where you can finally be and explore who you are and all of the different layers that make you who you are. Because I feel that there
Yeah.
is a lot of pressure from society into the person that we should be. So we go
Mhm.
around the world shooting ourselves, being like, "Oh,
Mhm.
I should do this, I should do that." And,
That's right.
and it sounds like in your school throughout the 10 months and the different um, experiences that students will have, like the fire walk and the different ceremonies, they're
Mm.
able to discover themselves.
And really take off a lot of those masks that we wear, like you're talking about the shoulds, right? Those are all masks that have been put on us. And so through this work, we learn to take them off.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And what about that program? I got intrigued. That program that you have about sexuality. Tell us more.
Yes. Well, it's a piece of work that I developed with two of my really good friends who live in North Carolina in the United States. And it's called Eros Work. And it is a program. They're both shadow work facilitators. And so this particular piece of work is designed around shadow work, which is meant to explore those hidden parts of self, the parts that we repress, that we don't really want others to see or to know about us. Those are our shadows, right? And so the foundation of this work is all about shadows, and the portal in order to get to those really deep, authentic places within the self is through sexuality, because actually sexuality and shadows will lead us to like our core wounds if we go through that portal. So it's a pretty powerful exploration when we start to explore our own, like our fantasies, our desires, the things that we hate, the things that are distasteful or disgusting in sexuality. All of that tells us so much about the self.
Yeah. I remember when I was doing the Somatica sex coaching certification. Um, there was one time during the class that we were talking about the kink experience.
Mm.
And it was amazing just to see how what it used to make us pain in the past, things that was uncomfortable, then we can bring it to
Yeah,
the presence and repeat those experiences, but now with agency. And then these
exactly.
aspects of agency make us, cross this boundary from like being like too fearful to detaching to like embracing fully
Exactly.
like your whole potential. And then with that comes a lot of like pleasure. It doesn't have to
Absolutely.
be the specific sexual pleasure of like genitals, but just like the pleasure of like being in control, or the pleasure of like willingly submit to another. Or
Absolutely. Absolutely. We talk about that in our Eros program, that the whole BDSM community and the whole kink world is a ritualization of this deep emotional work. I mean, it's those are ways that we can process, some of our trauma from the past legitimately. We can work those stories in a different way. And like you said, have agency over the narrative. So we create a new narrative around it by exploring it with consent, by exploring it in an adult mature way. So there's
Mhm.
there's there's power there to go into that realm.
Yeah, and what you said is very powerful to explore it within this adult perspective,
Mhm.
because our autonomic nervous system just go back into the full pattern where we just get triggered and react in one specific way. But I think that's the power of the narrative, how we
Mhm.
can create this a similar story of what happened.
Mhm. But from an adult perspective. So when we have trauma and we're triggered, and I'm sure you know all of this, right? Like what our body does, our body thinks that we're back at that early age when that trauma occurred, so we're actually reliving an experience from the past when it's in our body. So the beauty in redoing these rituals in an adult way with a different context and a different consciousness around it is that then we bring a mature adult perspective to what it looks like to be in control, to have your power fully intact, to be able to use your voice, like all of these things that essentially lead to deep healing of our wounds. It's very powerful.
It also makes me think of like inner child work,
Mm.
right? Because we have your adult self taking care of your little self that got triggered by a past experience, but now you just want to transform all that
Yeah.
and enjoy it and heal. Oh my God, you're doing such a powerful work.
So are you, it sounds like, Laura.
Yeah. And I think like there is a lot of taboo around sex coaching, and
Mm,
sex therapy.
mm.
I feel that there are a lot of specific scripts for heteronormative
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
on how to access sexuality, how to access pleasure. And
Mm,
even now within the whole the word that comes to mind right now is revolution, but it's kind of like it's more than a revolution. It's just like an awakening of
Mhm.
of our own sexual self that
Mhm.
doesn't have to fit within a specific parameters, that it could
Yeah.
be just literally a rainbow of
Yeah.
experiences, pleasure, ways of expressing ourselves and just showing up.
Yeah.
And I think that within this new awakening, having these kind of conversations where people know about the services that are available so they don't have to live within this hidden world of
Mm.
eating and satisfy.
Absolutely. And something we talked about the last time we talked, where you were talking about pleasure and how can we experience pleasure, especially as this awakening is taking place, like you said, right? Like we're in a time of deep transformation, I believe, as a civilization. A lot of shadows are coming to the light, and people are starting to have more awareness about themselves. And so what might it look like to experience pleasure outside of the bedroom or the living room or the kitchen or wherever you experience sexual pleasure, outside of the realm of sexuality? And I think that's a really important key piece in this, because pleasure isn't just in that realm. Pleasure is something that is inherently our divine birthright, if you will, in these human bodies that we're in, whatever gender these bodies are. Like, it is our inherent right to experience the pleasure of being alive. And so my own perspective of pleasure is that it has to do with presence. Is that when we're in some sort of emotional reaction to something, and we make a story about it, we create a narrative about it, right? We're either in the past thinking about something that did happen, or we're projecting into the future, and maybe there's some fear or some worry about what could happen. And so when we let go of the past or the future and bring ourselves right to this very moment, my own experience with emotions is that they're just energy and motion, right? You've probably heard that before, right? So it's just energy that can then move through your body. And if I don't have a story attached to it, so I'm not telling myself this is about so and so, or what's going to happen, with my kids at school next week, if I'm not telling myself anything, and I'm just focused on right now, like my breath, the air around my body, then that energy that maybe is, we give it all, it could be negative or positive, it could be constricting or expanding, but that energy will move through us, and it won't stick in the same way as it does when there's a story attached to it. And so my own experience of pleasure is, the more I'm present to this very moment, then the more awe and wonder and beauty and ecstatic expression that I can experience in this moment. I mean, it's all around me in this moment. It's with the smells that I smell and the sounds that I hear. The potential for like ecstasy and beauty and bliss is right here in this moment. We just need to detach from the stories of what happened before and what's going to happen later. So that's my perspective of pleasure.
Wow. I'm sold.
Well, you asked a great question, so I'm like, I gave it some real thought. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like you touched so many like interesting points of like self-exploration, changing the narrative, also living within the present, within your present time, because we cannot go back to the past or go to the future. And I think like
Yeah.
as a society we've been wired that way. We just like keep focusing so much in what happened, but then not really willing to make those changes because
That's right.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's programming, right? It's what we've been told to do, how we're told to behave in this
And
world.
I'm sorry,
Oh, go ahead.
I just got agree. And I don't know if because men has been the one who has leading the society that we have right now. Maybe is from their perspective that we are experiencing what is acceptable or not within pleasure. And
Interesting.
now that yeah, women are taking more ownership, and people who identified with different genders are taking more ownership into their own pleasure, and then
Yeah.
expanding more of that reality that doesn't have to be so constrained. Because I
Yes.
feel that just to give the benefit of the doubt to men, they also carry a lot of like responsibilities. Um,
I would agree. I mean, in a patriarchal society, I think there's been imprints onto, a certain demographic to like lead everything and be in charge of everything. And that too has had its weight. I think it's had its downfalls or its pitfalls. And so I think to undo all of that, all of us need to learn about what's real pleasure, not what our coping mechanisms are,
mhm,
but what real pleasure is, which doesn't require a coping mechanism because it's a full on like experience of aliveness is
mhm.
is my perspective of pleasure.
Yeah, and I think like I can see not as a coping mechanism, but as an experience in itself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want that kind of pleasure now.
It's available any moment of any day.
So, keep exploring your juicy, juicy mind. You just published a book. Tell us about this book.
Sure. Yeah, it's called All the Light and Dark Things. And it's a it's a spiritual fiction story, similar genre to like Dan Millman, The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. It's a story, or like The Alchemist, that kind of thing,
Mhm.
Paulo Coelho. So it's a story that's written all the way through, and embedded in all of the characters are the mystery teachings and the ancient teachings that I have adopted, if you will, as part of my work, that I've like brought into my work in the world, and that I offer and teach to others. And so it's all about shadows. It's all about recognizing, what might be in shadow, what might be repressed within the body, within the emotional body, and then learning how to, like you said, I love the word agency. Agency is such a powerful word. Learning how to have agency over our emotional body, because at the end of the day, we are not our emotions. They are something that pass through us. And so how can we be an empowered human despite all of what's moving and healing from our past? And
Mhm.
so that's the premise of the work. Is I took all of the spiritual teachings and put it into one piece of work, and then created some juicy bits around it. So there's sex and drama, and it gets, it gets a little scary at times, and it gets a little sad at times, and all of that is part of the human experience.
Oh wow, it sounds so interesting. Yeah, I read the Paulo Coelho book,
Mm,
and it's interesting how sort of like this fictional story can have um, so much like power
yeah.
in the journey that the different characters take.
Mm,
And even after like so many years of reading that book, the story keeps like resonating. And
yeah.
one thing that keeps resonating is just the end. Oh,
Mm.
I'm not gonna say the end for those who haven't seen it, but I remember just reading the end and be like this, like, oh wow, because it just comes as a full circle, right? And
Mhm.
the description of your book makes me feel like it might be similar, this like exciting experience and a little bit of like sex and a little bit of scariness and a little bit of everything, just
Yeah.
to take us to a point where we can just learn without
Mhm.
like indirectly learn
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah. Yeah. Learn by somebody else having the experience of it, which I think is, I mean, it's just another way of learning, right? I've read like hundreds of self-help books in my whole journey of becoming a holistic practitioner. And there's a similar theme to them, a similar way that the teachings are transmitted. And I wanted to do something different, another way to transmit them, and hopefully pieces of it stick and make an imprint on someone's experience or touch someone in a certain way.
Yeah. So where people can buy your book?
Well, it's on Amazon. So I published it with it was actually a local publishing house, Wand Publishing, and we went through the Amazon channel. So it's available on Amazon, and also hard copies. I've got it in a few places here in Edmonton, and I'm just beginning the process of like bringing it to bookstores, and that's a whole journey in and of itself.
Yes, but at least the book is finished. So
Yes,
the first step is done, the
that's
most
right.
important one. Wow.
Mm.
How long did it took you to write this book?
Well, I started, I mean, I've been an avid writer and I write in my journals. I have my entire life. And so I started really tracking these spiritual teachings about 10 years ago. And it was a girlfriend of mine who looked at me one day. This was about maybe 4 years ago. And she said, "You realize you probably have enough content for a book. You should just put it all together." And so I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." So I just copied and pasted everything I had ever written into one spot. And then I allowed the process to show me what the book was going to look like on the other side of it. And so for about 4 years I've been working on it. Not all of the time, obviously. I would work on it and then move into another cycle of my life. And
Mhm.
yeah, so it's about 10 years worth of writing.
Wow. Wow, a lot of wisdom in itself. You have
Mhm.
school, you have different programs, you have a like brand new work book. Is any work one-on-one that you do with people? Um,
Mhm.
like
Yeah,
what what do you do?
I do one-on-one work with people that is like a compilation of it, energy work. So part of my training as well is a holistic practitioner. I have about 13 or 14 different modalities that I've studied over the years. And so I'll do a compilation of energy work and some shadow work, some subconscious programming, reprogramming, and some coaching. All of that is kind of combined together based on what seems to be important for the people. So my main focus is group work, is like circle work, and I will also do one-on-one work just to kind of support those other big processes. Because as soon as we do a ritual with 20 or 30 people, that has power to it that can move a lot of energy in the body. And so it's my preference that people go through that gateway and then get the support that they need in order to put all the pieces together on the other side, because there's a lot of power there when we come together to heal.
Yeah. So normally these ceremonies, do you do them in person in
Mhm.
Edmonton, or is it
Mhm.
more of like online base?
It's all in person. And I also have been invited to different places. Like I've gone to Australia, I've gone to Costa Rica to offer different pieces of work, mostly sexuality and shadows, and
Mhm.
also just shadow work. So people will contact me and say, "Hey, we want this, in my community. Can you come and do it?" And then I'll go and I'll do it there.
Wonderful. Oh, that's so cool. And people can book you at your website, nataliejackson.com.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. And
Yeah,
you do have a program is starting up in September.
I do. Yes, my women's mystery school starts in September, and there are 5 weekends from September until June, and then also one evening a month that we do the mystery teachings in there. So it's a full-on journey of personal development.
And this is a 10 months long program.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I already knew this information, but every time you speak about it, it's like I get sold even more. Edmonton, so I can attend.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
So, just like more of like a chill question.
Mhm.
Are there any books, any podcasts, any musics that you would like to recommend people who are watching us, so they can start at least a little bit of their journey within their shadow
Mm.
practice and their sexuality?
Yeah, there's a couple really good books I recommend to people. And one of my favorites, and I think you like this book as well. I think when we talked about last time is Emily Nagoski's book, The Come As You Are.
Mhm.
That's one I talk about a lot with women, especially if there's blockages or some difficulties in the realm of sexuality. That book is excellent.
Mhm.
And I also really love Sherry Winston's Women's Anatomy of Arousal. That's one I've given copies away to the girlfriends of my children, the like nieces, and lots of women. I think I've bought probably 20 copies over the years and given them away. It has such good information about our own arousal system and our own anatomy and how to really learn about pleasure. The entire book is all learning about pleasure that's available in our own body, and how to learn to give that to yourself and to recognize it within the self first. And Sherry Winston does really great work in that realm. And so those two are great. And there's also one other that really touches on the shadow work, and that's called The Erotic Mind by Jack Moore. Have you read that one?
Oh yes, so juicy.
Oh, it's good.
I had it on audiobook.
Mhm.
So when I was, yeah, every time I go for a walk, I was listening a little bit of it. And what I like about
Yeah.
the book is that it shares a lot of like people's fantasies and people's experiences,
Mhm.
and it actually opened up my fantasy world.
Excellent. Excellent. That's one of the like foundational books that we referenced when we developed the whole Eros work program. So a lot of it is developed around Jack Moran's work, and he's done some really stellar work in that realm.
Because his erotic equation is attraction plus obstacles equal excitement. And
Yeah.
what makes me think is like this attraction is also the attachments that we have
Mm.
towards
Mm.
things, and our relationship with the different types of attachments that we have.
Mhm.
And then the obstacles makes me think of that trauma part that we also need
That's
to
right.
work on, because our bodies will feel triggered. And
Exactly.
then we will like to reproduce what is familiar, but not always what it make us, the happiest. So by analyzing into more detail this equation, people are able just to figure out, okay, why I keep going back to the same cycle, or maybe to that unhealthy relationship, because at the beginning it always feels so good, because it's something that that you're
Mm.
attracted to, it is
Mm.
imprinted within yourself. But then
Mm.
by getting to know your turn on and your turn off, then you can experience even more.
Mhm. Exactly. And start to recognize when those patterns, like we go into the same patterns just because it's familiar, but not necessarily because it's life giving.
Hmm.
When we start to recognize those things, we can really shift our relating with people like on a deep, deep level.
Yeah, when I was reading, and this is a little share, when I was reading, listening this book, I remember I had this very deep attraction for someone from the yoga community,
Mhm.
and I invited this person to go out, and they said, "Well, no, no, right now, just a little bit. I need some time." But then, in my mind and in my experience, I created this image that this person is like the most wonderful thing. And then when I listen about the equations and what turns me on and turns me on, I'd realized that within my life there was this pattern
Mm.
of of like um, keeping the attention to the things that weren't given readily to me,
Mm.
and always like create even more like excitement just to wait for it. But it wasn't reality, it was just in my head. So like
Right.
that simple equation just like allow me to realize and to understand, okay, what is this attraction that I have for this person who already told me, yeah, I'm not ready right now, it's not the time to go out.
Yes.
And then how I reacted, and how the whole thing happened.
Absolutely. And how many people have that same experience where they'll constantly want someone who doesn't want them, or who treats them a certain way that maybe isn't a respectful way, right? And we keep going back and keep going back. And it's conditioning, it's programming. As soon as we recognize that, then
Mhm.
we can shift it.
Yeah, because when I recognized it, I was like, oh, it's just a person who likes yoga.
There's lots of those out there.
Exactly. They changed the narrative, and it's just another
Mm.
person, right? And then
Mhm.
and then it's like focusing then to the people who are ready and willing to go out
That's
when
right.
I make that offer. right? It
Exactly.
doesn't feel, at the beginning, it didn't feel as comfortable, right?
Mm,
Because my nervous system wasn't used to those kind of feelings. But then the
right.
story was matching. Well, just give your attention to the people who are willing and ready to do it as well.
And then we start rewriting a whole new narrative. Well, and
And that's like the work that you do.
yeah, so it sounds like it's the work that you do too. So yay. Good.
Yeah, I think like we're the new generation of storytellers.
Totally. Yeah. I've often thought of myself as a myth maker, a storyteller and a myth maker. Like we're actually writing the mythology that will become, the mythology of the past someday. We're writing it by the stories we tell, the conversations that we have. This is myth making.
Yes,
Mhm.
creating history,
Yeah.
one pleasure talk at a time.
Exactly. What a great line that is. Beautiful.
Oh, Natalie, this has been wonderful. Is anything else that you would like to add, or share? Any questions that you have for me, or even for the people who are watching us?
I really would want, I guess I would want to end with this piece around inviting people to really have courage to go to those places that we've repressed, like to go to the places that maybe feel a little bit scary to go to, or that maybe necessarily want to open up that doorway because you've kept it closed for so long, that actually it takes more energy to keep that door closed than it does to actually open it and heal what's on the other side of it. And so that, there's freedom in that, and there's a whole new version of self on the other side of that. So I would really encourage people to open those closed doors and be courageous with it, be brave.
Oh, thank you so much for your wonderful words. And thank you so much for everyone who watches today. I'm going to be dropping all of the links on how to contact Natalie in the little description. And yeah, keep
Mm.
watching us, follow us, and leave us a comment if you enjoy it. And if you have any idea of future topics that you would like us to discuss, drop them in the comment section, and we will. Thank you so much, and
Beautiful.
I will see you in our next pleasure talks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.